Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time for the news with me, Al-Hamalawi, and we start off with a look at the headlines. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi attends ceremony marking Science Day. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli chairs a meeting on developing ancient Cairo. And Egypt denounces Yemeni Houthi militia's drone attack on a Saudi oil field. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi attended today a ceremony marking the Science Day. In his speech, His Excellency asserted that Egypt is attaching special priority to developing human resources, particularly on the scientific front. The President added that the country is also supporting efforts for upgrading scientific research efforts and encouraging innovative youth. President al-Sisi also stressed the necessity of establishing modern universities, coping with the country's pursuits for upgrading the higher education system and merging artificial intelligence specialties into up-to-date technological methods to be applied in universities. In the course of the celebration, the head of state honored a galaxy of prominent scientists and university professors and awarded them the State Certificate of Appreciation as well as the Order of the Nile. Marking the occasion, Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Dr. Khalid Abdel Ghaffar, said that Egypt, under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, is interested in honoring scientists. Egypt has been celebrating the Science Day since 1944 and is keen on honoring the most prominent of them for enriching the country's scientific life and developing it through their intellect and accomplishments. Since taking office, President al-Sisi has been cautious on meeting with scientists and intellectuals and benefiting of their opinions in promoting public living conditions on all fronts.
المرحلة القادمة من مسيرة العمل الوطني تفرض علينا وضع الإنسان المصري في مقدمة أولويات الدولة من خلال إطلاق استراتيجية شاملة لإصلاح وتطوير منظومة التعليم تتوازى مع البدء في تطبيق منظومة التأمين الصحي المتكامل.
الفترة دي هي بصراحة خطوة كويسة جدا.
كلام ولا في الأحلام.
الناس مش مصدقة نفسها.
تضافركم معانا هينجح سواء كان في التعليم أو في الصحة، والكلام ده للمفكرين والمثقفين والإعلاميين بالإضافة للمجتمع.
أي حد عنده قوائم انتظار يتصل بالرقم الساخن وربنا هيكرمه إن شاء الله.
خدمة قوائم الانتظار مع حضرتك.
لن ينجح أي نظام في الدولة المصرية، تأمين صحي، تعليم، استثمار، تنمية، إلا بالاستقرار والأمن.
صراحة حاسس بالشعب، لا في تغيير في البلد.
مس قلوب المصريين كلهم.
ادوا دفعة للنجاح وشجعوا وحطوا ايديكم معانا في ان احنا المنظومه تنجح. انا لو تخيرني بين ان انا اكل ولا اعالج دول، لا اعالج دول.
Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli today ordered the upgrading of downtown Cairo's iconic Tahrir Square as part of the government's current efforts to develop ancient historic Cairo. The Prime Minister made these remarks as he chaired a mini-cabinet meeting to follow up on the instructions made by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on innovating historic Cairo. He noted that a number of mega projects are being implemented across the governorate for their purpose and elaborated that the government's transfer to the new administrative capital provides a larger opportunity to developing Cairo's ancient, touristic and archaeological buildings. Sudan's ruling Transitional Council is to be announced today, one day after the signing of a deal between the main opposition coalition and the military council. The Transitional Council is to include 11 members, 5 military members and 5 to be chosen by the opposition coalition, while a civilian member will be picked up upon agreement by the two sides. The agreement brought an end to nearly 8 months of upheaval that saw masses mobilize against President Omar al-Bashir, who was ousted in April after 30 years in power. Egypt's foreign ministry condemned a Houthi drone attack on Saudi Arabia's Shaiba oil field. It expressed support for Saudi Arabia in any measures that would guarantee the stability and security of the kingdom. Earlier, Yemen's Houthi group launched the attack on an oil field in eastern Saudi Arabia, causing a fire at a gas plant, but there was no impact on oil production. A Houthi military spokesman said that the group had targeted the Shaiba oil field with 10 drones in what he said was the biggest attack in the depths of the kingdom, the world's top oil exporter, by the Iran-aligned group. Meanwhile, southern Yemeni separatists withdrew overnight from some government buildings in Aden that they seized last week, but held on to military camps that give them control over the southern port. The Southern Transitional Council said that the separatist forces, which had pulled back from the presidential palace and central bank, were vacating government institutions under the supervision of a Saudi-UAE delegation. However, the forces would not quit government military camps and that give them effective control of Aden. The Yemeni information minister, meanwhile, said that the Southerns had also withdrawn from the hospital and cabinet secretariat and were in the process of handing over the Interior Ministry and Aden's refinery. The Palestinian Health Ministry announced that the Israeli occupation troops opened fire on Gaza's border, killing 3 Palestinians and injuring a 4th in Beit Lahia, North Gaza Strip. The Israeli occupation authorities alleged that the tank and helicopter fire came in response to an infiltration attempt by a group of Palestinians. A suicide car bomber killed 63 people and wounded 182 in an attack on a packed wedding reception in the Afghan capital, as violence shows no sign of easing despite hopes for a deal on a U.S. troop withdrawal. The attack came as the Taliban and the United States are trying to negotiate an agreement on the withdrawal of U.S. forces in exchange for Taliban commitment on security and peace talks with Afghanistan's U.S.-backed government. The Taliban denied responsibility and condemned the blast at a West Kabul wedding hall in a minority Shiite neighborhood packed with people celebrating marriage. Indian authorities reimposed restrictions on movement in major parts of Kashmir's biggest city, Srinagar, today after violent overnight clashes between residents and police in which dozens were injured. In the past 24 hours, there has been a series of protests against New Delhi's August 5 revocation of the region's autonomy. This followed an easing in curbs on movement yesterday. The state government has said that it has not imposed a curfew over the past 2 weeks, but today people were being turned back at multiple roadblocks set up by the city in the past few hours. Security forces at some roadblocks have told residents there is a curfew. At least 24 people were admitted to hospitals with pellet injuries after violent clashes broke out in the old city. Moving on, Gibraltar rejected today EU's demand to seize an Iranian oil tanker at the center of diplomatic dispute as it prepared to leave the British overseas territory after weeks of detention. Gibraltar's government said that it could not seek a court order to detain the supertanker because U.S. sanctions against Iran were not applicable in the European Union. Gibraltar judge had ordered the Grace 1 tanker released on Thursday, weeks after authorities seized the vessel on suspicion of transporting oil to Syria in breach of European sanctions. A sea of democracy activists flooded the streets of Hong Kong today in a defiant show to the city's leaders that their movement still pulls wide public support, despite mounting violence and increasingly stark warnings from Beijing. The unprecedented wave of protest was sparked by opposition to a plan to allow extraditions to the Chinese mainland. However, protests have since morphed into a wider call for democratic rights in the semi-autonomous city. A look at the world of business and finance. Back home, Egypt's stock market indices collectively rose during today's dealings during the first session of the week, boosted by purchasing operations by Arab and foreign corporations as well as local investors. The benchmark EGX 30 index added 0.8% to reach 14,404 points, and the capped EGX 30 index was also up nearly the same percentage. The medium capped index EGX 70 and the more expanded EGX 100 index both edged higher 0.5%. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson came under pressure today to immediately recall lawmakers from their summer holiday so Parliament can debate Brexit. More than 100 MPs have written to Johnson to urge him to reconvene and let him sit permanently until October 31st, the date Britain is due to leave the European Union. MPs are not due to return until September the 3rd. Parliament is set to break up again shortly after it returns, with the main parties holding their annual conferences during the September break. Johnson, whose government commands a one-seat majority, insists that Britain must leave the EU on October 31st with or without a divorce deal with Brussels. Argentina's economy minister Nicolás Dujovne resigned after a week of economic disturbances caused by the country's president Mauricio Macri defeat in a primary poll ahead of general election. The country's peso ended the week having shed 20% of its value against the US dollar, as both Fitch and S&P cut the South American country's long-term credit rating, citing increased uncertainty and a rising risk of default. Fitch, which downgraded Argentina's credit rating 2 notches to CCC, said that center-right's defeat increases risks of a break from the policy strategy of the current administration of Mauricio Macri, guided by a program with the IMF.